Ammon of Nitria. Abba Ammon of Nitria came to see Abba Anthony and said to him, "Since my rule is stricter than yours, how is it that your name is better known amongst men than mine is?" Abba Anthony answered, "It is because I love God more than you." It was said of Abba Ammon that a very small quantity of wheat every 2 months was sufficient for him. Now he went to find Abba Pimin and said to him, "When I go to my neighbor's cell, or when he comes to mine for some need or other, we are afraid of entering into conversation, for fear of slipping into worldly subjects." The old man replied, "You are right, for young men need to be watchful." Then Abba Ammon continued, "But the old men, what do they do?" He replied, "The old men who have advanced in virtue have nothing in them that is worldly. There is nothing worldly in their mouths of which they could speak." "But," Ammon replied, "when I am obliged to speak to my neighbor, do you prefer me to speak of the Scriptures, or of the sayings of the fathers?" The old man answered him, "If you can't be silent, you had better talk about the sayings of the fathers than about the Scriptures. It is not so dangerous." A brother came to Sketes to see Abba Ammon, and said to him, "My father is sending me out on an errand, but I am afraid of fornication." The old man answered, "Whatever the hour when the temptation comes upon you, say, 'God of all virtue, by the prayers of my father, save me from it.'" So one day when a young girl closed the door upon him, he began to cry out with all his might, "God of my father, save me!" And immediately he found himself on the road to Sketes. Anub. Abba John said of Abba Anub and Abba Pimin and the rest of their brethren, who come from the same womb, and were made monks in Sketes, that when the barbarians came and laid waste that district for the first time, they left for a place called Terenuthis, until they decided where to settle. They stayed in an old temple several days. Then Abba Anub said to Abba Pimin, "For love's sake, do this. Let each of us live in quietness, each one by himself, without meeting one another the whole week." Abba Pimin replied, "We will do as you wish." So they did this. Now there was in the temple a statue of stone. When he woke up in the morning, Abba Anub threw stones at the face of the statue, and in the evening he said to it, "Forgive me." During the whole week he did this. On Saturday they came together, and Abba Pimin said to Abba Anub, "Abba, I have seen you during the whole week, throwing stones at the face of the statue, and kneeling to ask it to forgive you. Does a believer act thus?" The old man answered him, "I did this for your sake. When you saw me throwing stones at the face of the statue, did it speak, or did it become angry?" Abba Pimin said, "No." "Or again, when I bent down in penitence, was it moved, and did it say, 'I will not forgive you'?" Again Abba Pimin answered, "No." Then the old man resumed, "Now we are 7 brethren. If you wish us to live together, let us be like this statue, which is not moved whether one beats it or whether one flatters it. If you do not wish to become like this, there are 4 doors here in the temple. Let each one go where he will." Then the brethren prostrated themselves and said to Abba Anub, "We will do as you wish, Father, and we will listen to what you say to us." Abba Pimin added, "Let us live together to the rest of our time, working according to the word which the old man has given us." He made one of them housekeeper, and all that he brought them they ate, and none of them had the authority to say, "Bring us something else another time," or perhaps, "We do not want to eat this." Thus they passed all their time in quietness and peace. Abba Anub said, "Since the day when the name of Christ was invoked upon me, no lie has come out of my mouth." Abraham. It was said of an old man that for 50 years he had neither eaten bread nor drunk wine readily. He even said, I have destroyed fornication, avarice, and vainglory in myself. Learning that he had said this, Abba Abraham came and said to him, Did you really say that? He answered, Yes. Then Abba Abraham said to him, If you were to find a woman lying on your mat when you entered your cell, would you think that it is not a woman? No, he replied. But I should struggle against my thoughts so as not to touch her. Then Abba Abraham said, Then you have not destroyed the passion, but it still lives in you, although it is controlled. Again, if you are walking along and you see some gold amongst the stones and shells, can your spirit regard them all as of equal value? No, he replied. But I would struggle against my thoughts so as not to take the gold. The old man said to him, See, avarice still lives in you, although it is controlled. Abba Abraham continued, Suppose you learn that of two brothers one loves you while the other hates you and speaks evil of you. If they come to see you, will you receive them both with the same love? No, he replied. But I would struggle against my thoughts so as to be kind towards the one who hates me as towards the one who loves me. Abba Abraham said to him, So then the passions continue to live. It is simply that they are controlled by the saints. A brother questioned Abba Abraham, saying, If I find myself eating often, what will come of it? So the old man replied in this way, What are you saying, brother? Do you eat so much? Or perhaps you think that you have come to the threshing floor to thresh grain. Abba Abraham told of a man of Sketes, who was a scribe, and did not eat bread. A brother came to beg him to copy a book. The old man, whose spirit was engaged in contemplation, wrote, omitting some phrases and with no punctuation. The brother, taking the book and wishing to punctuate it, noticed that words were missing. So he said to the old man, Abba, there are some phrases missing. The old man said to him, Go and practice first that which is written. Then come back, and I will write the rest. Aris. Abba Abraham went to see Abba Aris. They were sitting together when the brother came to the old man and said to him, Tell me, what must I do to be saved? He replied, Go, and for the whole of this year eat only bread and salt in the evening. Then come back here, and I will talk to you again. The monk went away and did this. When the year was over, he came back to Abba Aris. Now by chance it happened that Abba Abraham was there again. Once more the old man said to the brother, Go, and for the whole of this year fast for 2 days at a time. When the brother had gone, Abba Abraham said to Abba Aris, Why do you prescribe an easy yoke to all the brethren, while you impose such a heavy burden on this brother? The old man replied, How I send them away depends upon what the brethren came to seek. Now it is for the sake of God that this one comes to hear a word, for he is a hard worker, and what I tell him he carries out eagerly. It is because of this that I speak the word of God to him. Alonius. Abba Alonius said, If a man does not say in his heart, In the world there is only myself and God, he will not gain peace. He also said, If I had not destroyed myself completely, I should not have been able to rebuild and shape myself again. He also said, If only a man desired it for a single day from morning till night, he would be able to come to the measure of God. One day Abba Agathon questioned Abba Alonius, saying, How can I control my tongue so as to tell no more lies? And Abba Alonius said to him, If you do not lie, you prepare many sins for yourself. How is that? Said he. The old man said to him, Suppose 2 men have committed a murder before your eyes, and one of them fled to your cell. The magistrate, seeking him, asks you, "Have you seen the murderer?" If you do not lie, you will deliver that man to death. It is better for you to abandon him unconditionally to God, for he knows all things. Apphie. They used to say of a bishop of Oxyrhynchus, named Abba Apphie, that when he was a monk, he submitted himself to a very severe way of life. When he became a bishop, he wished to practice the same austerity, even in the world, but he had not the strength to do so. Therefore he prostrated himself before God, saying, "Has your grace left me because of my episcopate?" Then he was given this revelation, "No, but when you were in solitude, and there was no one else, it was God who was your helper. Now that you are in the world, it is man." Apollo. There was in the cells an old man called Apollo. If someone came to find him about doing a piece of work, he would set out joyfully, saying, "I am going to work with Christ today, for the salvation of my soul, for that is the reward he gives." It was said of a certain Abba Apollo of Skytis, that he had been a shepherd, and was very uncouth. He had seen a pregnant woman in the field one day, and being urged by the devil, he had said, "I should like to see how the child lies in her womb." So he ripped her up and saw the fetus. Immediately his heart was troubled, and filled with compunction, he went to Skytis, and told the fathers what he had done. Now he heard them chanting, "The years of our age are 60 years and 10, and even by reason of strength 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble." He said to them, "I am 40 years old, and I have not made one prayer, and now, if I live another year, I shall not cease to pray God that he may pardon my sins." In fact, he did not work with his hands, but passed all his time in prayer, saying, "I, who as man have sinned, do you as God forgive." So his prayer became his activity by night and day. A brother who lived with him heard him saying, "I have sinned against you, Lord, forgive me, that I may enjoy a little peace." And he was sure that God had forgiven him all his sins, including the murder of the woman. But for the child's murder he was in doubt. Then an old man said to him, "God has forgiven you even the death of the child, but leaves you in grief, because that is good for your soul." With regard to receiving the brethren, the same Abba said that one should bow before the brethren who come, because it is not before them, but before God that we prostrate ourselves. "When you see your brother," he said, "you see the Lord your God." He added, "We have learnt that from Abraham. When you receive the brethren, invite them to rest a while, for this is what we learnt from Lot, who invited the angels to do so." Andrew. Abba Andrew said, "These 3 things are appropriate for a monk: exile, poverty, and endurance in silence." Io. They said there was a certain old man of Thebaid, Abba Antionus, who did many good works while he was young. But when he grew old, he became sick and blind. Since he was ill, the brethren took great care of him, even putting his food in his mouth. They asked Abba Io what would come of this solicitude. He replied, "I tell you, if when he eats even one date, he does so eagerly and willingly, God takes that away from his works. But if he receives it reluctantly and unwillingly, God will keep his works intact, since he has to do this against his will. The brethren will receive their reward." Ammonathus. A magistrate came one day to Pelusia to levy the poll tax on the monks, as on the secular population. All the brothers assembled together about this proposal, and went to Abba Ammonathus. Some of the fathers thought that they ought to go and see the emperor about it. Abba Amanathus said to them, "So much trouble is not necessary. Rather remain quietly in your cells, fast for 2 weeks, and I alone, with the grace of God, will deal with this matter." So the brothers went back to their cells. The old man stayed in the peace of his own cell. At the end of a fortnight, the brethren were dissatisfied with the old man, whom they had not seen stir, and they said, "The old man has done nothing about our business." On the 15th day, according to their agreement, the brethren assembled again, and the old man came with a letter bearing the emperor's seal. On seeing this, the brethren said to him, in great astonishment, "When did you get that, Abba?" The old man said, "Believe me, brother, I went that night to the emperor, who wrote this letter. Then, going to Alexandria, I had it countersigned by the magistrate, and thus I returned to you." Hearing this, the brothers were filled with fear, and did penance before him. So their business was settled, and the magistrate troubled them no further. Basile the Great. One of the old men said, when Saint Basile came to the monastery one day, he said to the abbot, after the customary exhortation, "Have you a brother here who is obedient?" The other replied, "They are all your servants, master, and strive for their salvation." But he repeated, "Have you a brother who is really obedient?" Then the abbot led a brother to him, and Saint Basile used him to serve during the meal. When the meal was ended, the brother brought him some water for rinsing his hands, and Saint Basile said to him, "Come here, so that I also may offer you water." The brother allowed the bishop to pour the water. Then Saint Basile said to him, "When I enter the sanctuary, come, that I may ordain you deacon." When this was done, he ordained him priest, and took him with him to the bishop's palace because of his obedience. Bessarion. Abba Doulas, the disciple of Abba Bessarion, said, "One day when we were walking beside the sea, I was thirsty, and I said to Abba Bessarion, 'Father, I am very thirsty.' He said a prayer and said to me, 'Drink some of the sea water.' The water proved sweet when I drank some. I even poured some into a leather bottle, for fear of being thirsty later. Seeing this, the old man asked me why I was taking some. I said to him, 'Forgive me, it is for fear of being thirsty later on.' Then the old man said, 'God is here, God is everywhere.'" Another time, when Abba Bessarion had occasion to do so, he said a prayer and crossed the river Chrysoras on foot, and then continued his way. Filled with wonder, I asked his pardon and said, "How did your feet feel when you were walking on the water?" He replied, "I felt the water just to my heels, but the rest was dry." On another day, while we were going to see an old man, the sun was setting. So Abba Bessarion said this prayer, "I pray you, Lord, that the sun may stand still till we reach your servant." And that is what happened. On another day, when I came to his cell, I found him standing at prayer, with his hands raised towards heaven. For 14 days he remained thus. Then he called me and told me to follow him. We went into the desert. Being thirsty, I said to him, "Father, I am thirsty." Then taking my sheepskin, the old man went about a stone's throw away, and when he had prayed, he brought it back, full of water. Then we walked on and came to a cave where, on entering, we found a brother seated, engaged in plaiting a rope. He did not raise his eyes to us, nor greet us, since he did not want to enter into conversation with us. So the old man said to me, "Let us go." No doubt the old man is not sure if he ought to speak with us. We continued our journey towards Lycopolis, till we reached Abba John's cell. After greeting him, we prayed. Then the old man sat down to speak of the vision which he had had. Abba Bessarion said it had been made known to him that the temples would be overthrown. That is what happened. They were overthrown. On our return, when we came again to the cave where we had seen the brother, the old man said to me, "Let us go in and see him. Perhaps God has told him to speak to us." When we had entered, we found him dead. The old man said to me, "Come, brother, let us take the body." It is for this reason God has sent us here. When we took the body to bury it, we perceived that it was a woman. Filled with astonishment, the old man said, "See how the women triumph over Satan, while we still behave badly in the towns." Having given thanks to God, who protects those who love him, we went away. One day, a man possessed with a devil came to Skytis, and they prayed over him. But the devil did not leave him, for it was obstinate. The priest said, "What can we do against this devil? No one can drive him away, except Abba Bessarion. But if we call him, he will not come, even to the church. Therefore, let us do this. Since he comes to church early, before anyone else, let us make the possessed sleep here, and when he comes, let us keep to our prayer, and say to him, 'Abba, awaken the brother.'" This is what they did. When the old man came early, they kept to their prayer and said to him, "Awaken the brother." The old man said to him, "Arise and go." Immediately the devil departed from him, and from that hour he was healed. Abba Bessarion said, "For 14 days and nights I have stood upright in the midst of thorn bushes without sleeping." A brother who had sinned was turned out from the church by the priest. Abba Bessarion got up and went with him, saying, "I too am a sinner." The same Abba Bessarion said, "For 14 years I have never lain down, but have always slept, sitting or standing." The same Abba said, "When you are at peace, without having to struggle, humiliate yourself for fear of being led astray by joy which is inappropriate. We magnify ourselves, and we are delivered to warfare. For often, because of our weakness, God does not allow us to be tempted, for fear we should be overcome." A brother who shared a lodging with other brothers asked Abba Bessarion, "What should I do?" The old man replied, "Keep silence, and do not compare yourself with others." Abba Bessarion, at the point of death, said, "The monk ought to be as the cherubim and the seraphim, all I." Abba Bessarion's disciples related that his life had been like that of a bird of the air, or a fish, or an animal living on earth, passing all the time of his life without trouble or disquiet. The care of a dwelling did not trouble him, and the desire for a particular place never seemed to dominate his soul, no more than the abundance of delights, or the possession of houses, or the reading of books. But he seemed entirely free from all the passions of the body, sustaining himself on the hope of good things to come, firm in the strength of his faith. He lived in patience, like a prisoner who is led everywhere, always suffering cold and nakedness, scorched by the sun. He always lived in the open air, afflicting himself on the edge of the desert like a vagabond. Often he found it good to be carried over the sea to distant and uninhabited regions. When he happened to come into pleasanter places, when the brethren lived a life in common, he would sit outside at the gate, weeping and lamenting like one shipwrecked, and flung back onto the earth. Then, if one of the brethren coming out found him there, sitting like one of the poor beggars living in the world, and filled with compassion approached him, asking, "Man, why are you sleeping? If you are in need of something, as far as we can, we will see you receive it. Only come in, share our table, and rest yourself." He would reply, "I cannot live under a roof, so long as I have not found again the riches of my house," adding that he had lost great riches in various ways. "I have fallen amongst pirates, I have suffered shipwreck, I have dishonored my rank, becoming unknown, famous as I was." The brother, moved by these words, returned, bringing a morsel of bread and giving it him, saying, "Take this, Father, all the rest, as you say. God will restore to you home, honor, and the riches of which you speak." But he, bewailing himself yet more, sighed deeply, adding, "I cannot say if I shall find again those lost good things I seek, but I am still more afflicted, every day suffering the danger of death, having no respite because of my great calamities, for always I must wander in order to finish my course." Benjamin. Abba Benjamin said, "When we returned to Skytis, once the harvest was over, In payment they brought each of us a plaster vessel containing a pint of oil from Alexandria. When the time of harvest came again, the brothers brought what was left to the church. For my own part, I had not uncorked my vessel, but had taken a little by piercing it with a stiletto, imagining in my heart that I had achieved something splendid. But when the brothers brought their plaster vessels, as they were, while mine was pierced, I was ashamed, as though I had committed fornication. Abba Benjamin, priest of the cells, said, One day at Skeetes we went to an old man, intending to take him a little oil, but he said to us, Look at the little vessel you brought me 3 years ago. It has remained there where you put it. At these words we wondered at the old man's virtue. The same Abba said, We went to another old man who detained us for a meal, and he offered us oil of horseradish. We said to him, Father, give us rather a little good oil. At these words he crossed himself and said, I did not know there was any other kind. As he was dying, Abba Benjamin said to his sons, If you observe the following, you can be saved. Be joyful at all times. Pray without ceasing, and give thanks for all things. He also said, Walk in the royal way, measuring the landmarks without meanness. Biara. Someone questioned Abba Biara in these words, What shall I do to be saved? He replied, Go, reduce your appetite and your manual work. Dwell without care in your cell, and you will be saved.